The mainland starts military drills following Tsai Ing-wen's visit to the U.S. Health price rise offered by the MTR. Government says athletes will not be affected by measures taken in relation to national anthem mistakes. Good evening and welcome to TVB News. The mainland has conducted military drills in the Taiwan Strait today, just one day after Taiwan leader Tsai Ing-wen returned to the island after meeting U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy on a transit trip to the United States. The drills will last from April the 8th to 10th. Daniel Rao tells us more.
The People's Liberation Army's Eastern Theatre Command said today it had started the combat readiness patrols and joint sword exercises around Taiwan. It earlier said it would be holding them in the Taiwan Strait and to the north, south and east of the island as planned. A video released on Saturday showed that the Army, Air and Naval forces of the command manoeuvred towards a designated area upon receiving the command and conducted a military deployment. The command said the drills are a serious warning to the Taiwan independent separatist forces and external forces' collusion and provocation. The spokesperson added the drills are a necessary action to defend national sovereignty and territorial integrity. The drills come after Taiwan leader Tsai Ing-wen's so-called transit trip through the United States earlier this week, where she met with U.S. House of Representatives Speaker Kevin McCarthy in Los Angeles. Beijing had threatened unspecified retaliation if the meeting with McCarthy, second in line to succeed the U.S. president after the vice president, were to take place. Beijing staged military drills around Taiwan, including live-fire missile launches last August after then U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited Taipei. The People's Daily, the official newspaper of the ruling Communist Party, said in a commentary today that the government has a strong ability to thwart any form of Taiwan independent secession. It said all countermeasures taken by the Chinese government belong to China's legitimate and legal right to safeguard national sovereignty and territorial integrity. Reuters reported that Taipei says it will respond calmly, adding 42 mainland fighter jets briefly crossed the median line of the Taiwan Strait. Reuters also said fighter planes were seen taking off from an airbase in Taiwan on Saturday, which later landed at a Taiwanese airbase after concluding drills. Daniel, TVB News.
Reactions were mixed among residents in Beijing and Taiwan over the military drills. A Beijing resident said military drill is a must and it's best to take down Taiwan, but another resident who does trade for a living is worried businesses will be affected. A Taipei resident said it's clear that China is pushing the boundaries with each step it's taking. Meanwhile, another resident thinks life must go on and the best thing Taiwan residents can do is to stay calm. Former chief editor of Global Times Hu Xijin wrote on social media that the mainland is using this drill to correct the United States and Taiwan's expectations on the Taiwan Strait. Here in Hong Kong, today is the MTR's Thank You Day. This means passengers who take the metro can have a 50% discount over the weekend. Mimosa Ngai with more.
Today is the second day of the Easter holiday and the first day of the MTR's Thank You Days. It means a 50% discount for the majority of trips using an Octopus card. It applies on nearly all metro lines, light rail and MTR bus routes. Why is the rail giant offering half-price trips? It traces back to the fare adjustment mechanism that the company revealed last month. Under the revision, the company has to select 4 weekends to provide half-price discounts. This new deal replaces a previous 3% fare rebate. For instance, people who are 64 years or below and who travel to Luohu from Shenzhen will normally pay just over $25. On a Thank You Day, the fare becomes $12.50. People who are 65 or over normally pay $12.60 for Luohu and Lok Ma Chau, but it's only $6.30 on a special fare day. The $2 concession scheme for the elderly becomes even cheaper at just $1. The offer can be used in conjunction with other fare promotions, including MTR interchange discount and MTR fare saver. However, the discount does not apply to the MTR feeder bus, first class premium on East Rail lines or the Airport Express. LegCo member Ben Chan criticized the new discount for being only available on weekends, saying the previous 3% rebate is better. And how do the travelers think?
I love Ventura, yeah. So it's back to the community, give it back to the community, but I heard it's like a penalty, right?
Would you travel more because of this discount?
I'm not saying I'm going to travel more, but I would definitely travel to somewhere like Dongchong, just check it out, the outlet stuff.
It's not fair for the working people because they work and then when they actually buy the stuff, it's very expensive for them.
MTR will also introduce 2 other thank you days next month, offering passengers a 50% fare discount on their trips. Memo Sanai, TVB News.
Following mistakes in playing the national anthem involving the city's ice hockey team in Bosnia, the membership status of the Hong Kong Ice Hockey Association could be suspended. The government said it will not affect athletes should the suspension take effect. The Sports Federation and Olympic Committee, or SFNOC, has already begun procedures to temporarily suspend Hong Kong Ice Hockey Association's membership.
對之前我哋已經提供咗一隻USB 手指啦。
Speaking on a radio program, Secretary for Culture, Sports and Tourism Kevin Yeung said the team was given a USB memory stick with the accurate version of the national anthem, so there's no room for mistakes. He added the key aspect of the incident was whether the association had done enough to ensure the correct national anthem was played and whether it had fulfilled the requirements of SFNOC as well as the public. If the suspension takes effect, funding for the group could also be reduced.
We know exactly what sort of funding they will require for the coming year. If at the end of the day we have to do it, we will make sure that we will ensure that the athletes will be able to continue to participate in international competitions, and also their training will not be affected.
In a statement released by the Hong Kong Ice Hockey Association, it noted all government funding is allocated to training and competition fees, as well as wages for its clerks and MPF. The group added cutting any funding will affect the training and development of athletes. Ronnie Wong, Deputy Secretary General of SFNOC, said it's hard to say whether it should further amend guidelines on the playing of the national anthem for sports teams and refused to comment further on the incident. The Hong Kong Ice Hockey Association has less than a month to submit a full written explanation over the misplaying and suggest ways to improve its governance. That will also determine whether the association will have its membership officially suspended. As Hong Kong enters its peak influenza season, some experts say the situation might be dire if kids get infected with multiple viruses at the same time. An expert recommended that children should receive flu shots to avoid developing serious symptoms. Veronica Lin tells us more.
With the lifting of the mask mandate, influenza cases have been on the rise. Dr. Mike Kwan, Honorary Clinical Associate Professor of Pediatrics and Adolescent Medicine at the University of Hong Kong, says the outbreak was expected and will last around 3 months. However, a point of concern would be when someone is affected with 2 or more viruses at the same time.
例如係新冠病毒加埋呢個甲型流感病毒。
Kwan says the combination of viruses, such as COVID and influenza A, is called a twindemic. It's a worrying mix if these 2 are then combined with the syncytial virus, forming a tridemic. Kwan adds that this strain of influenza A is accompanied by bowel irritability, with symptoms including vomiting, diarrhea, and so on. It mostly affects kids aged 2 to 3. He wants children and those with chronic illnesses to get a flu shot as soon as possible, and warns parents to not let their guard down.
重點咧側重於都係打呢個新冠疫苗啊。
He adds that most have been focusing on getting their COVID vaccine and not the flu shot. He also found that kids who have not received a flu shot had a higher chance of experiencing severe complications from the virus. Meanwhile, Siu Lam Hospital earlier announced several patients in its ward for males with intellectual disabilities had been infected with influenza A. Another 6 patients in the ward, aged 48 to 71, have shown respiratory symptoms and have all tested positive. They are to receive treatment in isolation. Veronica Lin, TVB News.
The government's Top Talent Pass scheme has received more than 14,000 applications as of February this year, according to the Immigration Department. Of the applicants, more than 8,700 were successful and around 460 were rejected for not meeting requirements. Over 8,300 of those approved, or 95%, were from mainland China, followed by Canadians and Australians, with 97 and 77 candidates respectively. The candidates were separated into three categories: income, degree, and work experience. The majority fall under Category B, which means they are graduates of the top 100 universities with at least 3 years working experience over the past 5 years. Most applicants' earnings over the past year were between $3 and $5 million. Still ahead on tonight's news. Documents on US and NATO military supplies to Ukraine are leaked. New controversies over abortion in the US. And a look at how the Pope and others observe Good Friday. Welcome back to TVB News. Classified documents have been leaked on the internet showing US and NATO military plans to support Ukraine. Ukraine claimed the information is misinformation. In another development, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and the President of Brazil have been outlining how they think the war could end. David Garrett reports.
This is the second Easter of war between Ukraine and Russia. This crippled car is in the Donetsk region, which is under Russian control. Russia news outlets claim 9 people were killed by Ukraine. Shelling hit a civilian car park. Independent footage showed damaged buildings and vehicles at the site. This as a report into how the US and NATO plans to assist Ukraine's military offensive was posted on social media. The documents appeared briefly on Twitter and other sites. The Pentagon are investigating how the information leaked. One secret paper predicted a high Ukrainian military death toll. Ukraine does not disclose military mortality figures. A Kiev presidential official blamed Russian disinformation, saying the documents contained a very large amount of fictitious information. In Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky celebrated Ramadan with his own Muslim troops. He awarded medals to Islamic servicemen and attended an iftar dinner at a cultural centre outside Kiev. In Turkey, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan welcomed Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Lavrov said any potential peace deal must focus on creating a new world order and take into account his country's interests and concerns. He also said Russia could pull out of a deal allowing the export of Ukrainian grain if the West fails to remove obstacles to Russian agriculture.
In Israel, an Italian tourist was killed and 5 others were wounded after a car ramming attack in Tel Aviv. An Israeli security source identified the alleged assailant as an Israeli Arab from the town of Kafir Qassem. A police officer who was nearby arrived at the scene to find several people wounded and an overturned car near a popular Tel Aviv promenade. The officer neutralized the driver when he tried to pull a gun, police said. Violence has increased in Israel over the past week. Israel has been stepping up attacks on Palestinians, including this week's attack on worshippers at the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. In what could be a breakthrough for peace in the Middle East, a Reuters report says Saudi officials are expected to visit Yemen's capital Sana'a next week to discuss a permanent ceasefire with Iran-backed Houthi representatives. Talks are reportedly underway to reopen all of Yemen's ports and enact a political transition. Nazvi Karim reports.
A military alliance led by Saudi Arabia has been fighting in North Yemen since 2015 after the Houthis ousted what they say was a corrupt government from the capital Sana'a. It was seen as a proxy war against Iran, which backed the Houthis, with the United States and Britain providing diplomatic and military support to Riyadh. After tens of thousands of deaths and famine, the prospects of peace has emerged thanks to last month's Beijing brokered deal for Saudi and Iran to resume diplomatic relations.
It is a remarkable moment to see the easing of tensions between Iran and Saudi Arabia, because for a number of years, they have very much been in direct conflict as well as indirect conflict in other parts of the Middle East. And anything that can be done to reduce the kinds of violence that we see in Yemen, in Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, between Iran and Saudi Arabia directly is of benefit, not just to the people in the region, but also to the world. So from that perspective, that is helpful.
China's diplomatic achievement in bringing two bitter Middle Eastern enemies together came against a background of the traditionally strong U.S. influence in the region. Rubin says Saudi and the U.S. remain close allies.
But what this doesn't mean is that they want the United States to disappear. There's nothing in this agreement that says that Saudi Arabia is no longer an ally of the United States, nor a partner with the United States on many issues.
At Thursday's Beijing meeting between Saudi's Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud and Iran's Hossein Amir Abdullahian, the two sides said they would work to reopen embassies and consulates, expand cooperation, ease visa restrictions and resume flights. Nazvi Karim, TVB News.
Doctors in the U.S. state of Idaho are concerned about restrictive abortion laws that make it a crime to perform such procedures. While in Texas, two courts offered conflicting rulings on the abortion pill mifepristone, which has been widely available for more than 20 years. This report from NBC.
Not far from Idaho's Capitol building, Dr. Kylie Cooper and her family are packing up and moving out of the state. The high-risk pregnancy specialist says she can no longer safely practice under one of the nation's most restrictive abortion bans.
Husband and I are finding ourselves having conversations about what we would do if I were charged with a felony.
Idaho only has exceptions for rape, incest, or averting the mother's death.
Do I make the medically appropriate decision and commit a felony? Or do I follow the law and then watch as this person in front of me gets sicker and sicker?
A recent survey shows about half of OBGYNs in Idaho are considering leaving the state in the next year. All but two of those polled say the state's abortion ban is the reason.
So you don't think doctors are leaving the state?
I don't think there's a huge outflow of doctors.
State Attorney General Raul Labrador.
I think maybe they just need more education on what the law allows.
So you're saying the doctors are misinformed?
I think I've heard a lot of things that borders on misinformation. But I think doctors are safe as long as they're following the law.
Many doctors say the law can be confusing. In fact, just hours after talking to us, Labrador withdrew a widely circulated letter to a state senator in which he stated the law prohibits doctors from providing abortion pills or referring women out of state for abortions, now saying it was not intended as a guidance document, and an updated law made it moot. For Dr. Cooper, it's a hard day leaving patients like the one who recently asked,
"Is it safe for me to be pregnant in Idaho?" And my unequivocal answer was no, it's not.
But she doesn't think it's safe for doctors either. Kristen Dahlgren, NBC News, Boise, Idaho.
The recently hospitalized Pope Francis presided over the Passion of the Lord prayer service at St. Peter's Basilica in Italy on Good Friday. Elsewhere, Christians around the world observed Good Friday in a variety of ways. Daniel Rao tells us more.
Pope Francis presided over the Passion of the Lord prayer service at St. Peter's Basilica on Friday as planned, after the Vatican announced he wouldn't go to the Colosseum for the traditional Way of the Cross procession due to unseasonably cold nighttime temperatures in Rome. Pope Francis, who was recently hospitalized with bronchitis, instead watched the procession from his home at the Vatican. The Colosseum appointment is a highlight of Holy Week ceremonies. At this year's procession, in which a tall, slim, lightweight cross was carried by faithful, some 20,000 people turned out. When the procession ended and a cardinal instead of the Pope gave a blessing, a shout of "Long live the Pope" rose from the crowd. Francis chose as the procession's theme Voices of Peace in a Time of War. Read aloud recounts of suffering of migrants and refugees from war, civil warfare or hunger in Africa, Southeast Asia, the Middle East, South America and elsewhere. Among the accounts were those of a Ukrainian youth who had first fled to Italy, where his grandmother works, to escape the war at home, but later, homesick, returned to his country. Francis has repeatedly lamented the suffering of the Ukrainian people and issued many appeals for peace. Elsewhere, thousands of Christian pilgrims and clergy members marched through the ancient stone alleys of Jerusalem's Old City, retracing Jesus' path to crucifixion in observation of Good Friday. The faithful carried wooden crosses and sang hymns to mark one of Christianity's most solemn and sacred days. The procession culminates at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, where Catholic and Orthodox Christians believe Jesus was buried before his resurrection on what is celebrated as Easter Sunday. Meanwhile, Catholics in New York included the Brooklyn Bridge in their Way of the Cross procession on Good Friday. More than 2,000 people traveled from St. James Cathedral Basilica in Brooklyn over the bridge to St. Andrew's Church in Manhattan. In Bolivia, artists gathered to make large sand sculptures of images representing the Passion of the Christ for Easter. The event is an annual visual spectacle in the Andean country for the Holy Week. 250 artists from Bolivia, Peru and Argentina have worked on 25 sculptures, most of them with religious themes, on the sands of Cojuraya, 190 kilometers south of the capital, La Paz. Dan Orell, TVB News.
And that's the news for tonight. Thanks for watching.